Brian is 29-year-old son of ours. Lovely boy, very popular. Loved to, it's great for walking on the Greenway, riding his bike on the Greenway.
He had bought a new phone the week before, and he had said that he was going down to the phone shop. There was some little thing wrong with it, and he left the house at around 9 o'clock, and sort of that was the last that we had sort of seen him on that particular morning. He didn't have any breakfast either. He was to be in work at 12 o'clock, and he never contacted anybody to say that he wasn't coming in. Out of character.
I asked, was Brian there? And they said that he never turned up for work and that he never called in. So just knew straight away, just had that horrible feeling in my stomach that there was something very wrong.
Today is the 93rd day that Brian Kinsella has been missing, and we've been out searching since day one.
The Marine Search and Rescue were searching around the river, and then there was other search parties that were walking from the riverbed up onto land, and then the surrounding fields and sheds up around the Gracedieu area and from the river.
We have an operational team on the water and also on the land, and we've also drafted in our drone team to obviously to search by air. We've had a massive extensive search here from numerous agencies.
To this day, like, there's nothing. Oh, it was horrible because you see this kind of thing, but you'd never think that it's going to happen to you.
From the land side, but we're looking at the Greenway, where Brian was last seen heading in this direction. Stretches all the way, 46 kilometres all the way to Dungarvan, and we also have an awful lot of fields on either side, and we also have gullies and dikes and small bridges for access of farmers that we've had to search continuously. His friends have put in some serious effort along with the family as well, and that can't be forgotten. There's a family at home waiting for their loved one to come back.
Mick Rooney, investigative journalist, Radio Espial. This is episode 43. Thank you to all our recent subscribers and all your support. Let's just get straight into this. As you will have seen, it's the case of missing Waterford man Brian Kinsella. Our case summary: Brian Kinsella went missing from his family home in Gracedieu Heights in Waterford, Ireland on the 17th of November 2021. He told his parents that he was heading to a phone shop to have his new device looked at after having problems with it. He was due in work at 12 p.m. at Musgrave's cash and carry, where he worked for his daily shift. He never turned up for work, and soon it was established that he also never visited the phone shop in Waterford City. He was last seen on CCTV near Grattan Quay in the town at 10 minutes past 10 that morning. No trace of him or the reasons behind his disappearance were ever discovered. He was reported missing on the day of his disappearance at 7 p.m. in the evening. An extensive local land and sea search began soon afterwards, lasting many weeks and indeed months, right into February 2022. His case soon captured local and national media attention in Ireland due to the efforts of his family and friends. To this day, in 2024, substantive leads have never emerged in the case. Subsequent sightings of him in the area and elsewhere afterwards were eventually eliminated. Now, a little bit more on the background of this case. Brian Kinsella was born in Waterford on the 18th of March 1991 to Eugene and Nuala Kinsella. The only son in the family, he grew up with his three sisters, Geraldine, Jennifer and Rebecca. They resided at Gracedieu Heights, about 3.5 kilometres and 20 minutes walk from the main Waterford city thoroughfare. Brian was quiet but active and sociable, popular among friends and workmates and affectionately referred to as Kinto. Many of his friends also took part in the subsequent searches for him, some voluntary and others who knew Brian as school friends and as part of their professional roles with Waterford Marine Search and Rescue. Brian was a fit and active person and very familiar with the surrounding areas of Waterford. At almost 6 foot tall, he was very recognisable within the area he lived with his parents, traversing to local work and socialising. He was considered dependable, even predictable, friendly and honest by workmates and friends, and no one would mean him any harm. There is no record of previous people he was in a relationship with to say a bad word about him. In essence, most people who entered Brian Kinsella's world loved and liked him like his family. But Brian Kinsella still vanished without trace on the morning of November the 17th, 2021. He told his father that he was going to a phone shop in Waterford City to have his new mobile phone looked at. Kieran is going to join us now, so let's really start to get into this timeline of this case. Kieran joined us now from Irish Cold Cases and Ireland's Vanishing Triangle. Kieran, we've heard the general summary of this case.
Yeah. How's it going, Mick? Yeah, the Brian Kinsella case, I actually remember it wasn't so long ago at all. Like,
No, where are we? 2022, wasn't it? No, 21, sorry, 21, November 21.
Post-COVID anyway, so that's quite recent.
Yeah.
But I think we said this before about a few cases, even though it's recent, like there's like extremely very little to go on in this one. Like,
there's very, very limited details, and that's going to come across strongly, I think, in the timeline. And look, as I always say, it is what it is. We can do our best with this case, because I know it's a case that I haven't seen a great deal of coverage, certainly to an in-depth level.
No, you're right about that. Like, there's a good bit of coverage, right? Like, I think a lot of people know his name and his picture, but that's kind of about all the real knowledge there is out there, isn't it, really?
Pretty much. I would like to think in what we've done, we're presenting maybe a little bit more in and around the case, a little bit more sort of structure and detail around this case. But yeah, even this was a struggle, but it was a case suggested to me that we look at. I know we've talked privately about this case since probably summer last year, and thought about doing it, and then over the Christmas period into January, a couple of more subscribers suggested, you know, would you look at the Brian Kinsella case and see what you can, what your thoughts are. So look, here we are, and
I'm trying to say, even though we've talked about it privately, I think we can safely say everything we know is going to be in this timeline. There's nothing else like under the surface or anything.
No, certainly nothing that we're not. I do say on occasion, Kieran says it, I say it, that there are maybe things that we don't want to go into, that we know a little bit more about, but are maybe sensitive things. And honestly, there isn't anything that we're not giving you here that we're leaving out, or we're thinking no, that it's best not to say that. We literally are giving you everything that we have on this case. Okay, let's start. You've heard the case summary, and then I went into the background of the case. We're gonna start with the timeline, and it is where it's the only place we can start, and that is the day of disappearance. I would have liked to have known more about what Brian was doing prior to this, but I don't. So we're starting on Wednesday, November the 17th, 2021. Contrary to other timelines I've produced for these case episodes, this is the factual detail we must start out with, based on what is known. I would have begun earlier in the timeline, but it's like what is known of Brian Kinsella's life only began the day of his disappearance. Usually, over the years of a missing persons case, a degree of personal information is known publicly. All that is known is that Brian rose sometime prior to 9 a.m. and communicated plans to his parents that he intended to visit a shop where he recently bought a new phone to have it looked at because it was not working the way he needed. There's even details in the media about this. We have heard, and you're going to see clips of this from his father. We are reasonably certain it was a new phone that he was returning to the shop about. He wasn't going to the shop to buy a new phone. And I think that's been misreported by a number of media outlets. Now,
it'll be quite, sorry, Mick, it'll be quite interesting to know what condition the phone was. Like, was it working, turned on, all that type of stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And again, you know, we're not holding anything back here. These are the details we have that were given to you. We don't know what the specific reasons were around, you know, because it would be somewhat unusual to buy a phone a week or two before and then have to return to the shop. Generally, I'm inclined to think this was maybe an issue he had about understanding how fully that the phone worked. Maybe the apps that he wasn't getting properly working. There was certain functionality issues. Maybe it was around that. I don't exactly know.
There was a quote somewhere I read saying that he was having problems getting the phone to do specifically what he wanted to do.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. He wasn't going in to buy a new phone as such, or have it fixed in that sense that it was broken or anything. Okay, his father noted that Brian did not have breakfast at their home before leaving. Now, again, there's been some conflict in the time specifically that Brian left the house. We have been given information that it was 9:15 a.m. and we're inclined to believe that that's correct. There's also been media who reported that it was more closer to 9:30. In the whole scheme of things, I don't think it, in what we're about to talk about now, I don't think it dramatically changes things. But we are going at least with 9:15 a.m. Brian leaves the family home at Gracedieu Heights around 9:15 a.m. Why? Because we have door cam footage and we can see the attire that Brian Kinsella was wearing that morning, and you can see it there in that image. When last seen, Brian was wearing a blue jacket, you can see it there, black Adidas tracksuit bottoms, I'm not going to say they're black, I think they're black, with white stripes and black runners with a white sole. He was also wearing a black baseball cap and prescription glasses. Yeah, look, there's nothing more to be seen from that, other than I will note there is a vehicle in the front driveway. Now, we know that in Brian's journey from his home to this phone shop in Waterford City, he is witnessed in the Summerfield area beyond his home around this time. This is 9:40 a.m. You can see this map at the very top. You can see the Waterford Greenway. You can see Gracedieu Heights, where he lived. And the two key areas, or probably three key areas that we'll look at, is St. Dominic's Credit Union, where he was picked up on CCTV, and Geraghty's, and also the phone shop. I found a little bit more detail on the phone shop and the area, and we're going to discuss that very soon. Now, at 10:10 a.m., so 10 minutes after 10 in the morning, Brian was last seen on CCTV near Grattan Quay in the town. He's seen walking past St. Dominic's Credit Union and Geraghty's tyre shop, walking in the direction of Waterford Greenway area. Now, note, from Gracedieu Heights to Grattan Quay, it's about a 23 minutes walk. So it's not a particularly long walk. But there we have the stark reality that we're looking at a time movement of 9:15 to 55 minutes later. Even if we go with the 9:30 a.m. leaving, given some varied statements, it would take so long to get to Grattan Quay on CCTV. It wouldn't take 55 minutes. It's 23 minutes at a reasonable walk. The doorcam still image, originally released by Gardaí, does not include the digital timestamp displayed. My understanding is it's been cropped out. I don't know why that is. It would have been better if it was released with the timestamp in it.
Yeah, usually the timestamp is left on, right?
Yeah. So
the timestamp off.
There you take it. Like I said, it's neither here nor there. Whether you take it at 9:15 or 9:30, we've still got a huge timing hole here, Kieran.
Yeah, no, just the gap in time, I suppose, is the most significant thing we've came across, because the rest just kind of looks like a standard day. Just one thing I sort of picked up on. I wonder why his father noted that he didn't have breakfast. I wonder, did they always have breakfast in the morning, or why he noted that?
It seemed to in the Crime Line interview at the top end of it initially, he mentioned it. In fact, I'm not going to overjudge things. I don't know why necessarily he mentioned it. Was it unusual that he didn't have breakfast?
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah, I wonder, is that
why mention it? Was he in a rush to do something then? I don't know. But again,
he was in work at 1:30, wasn't he? So
no, 12 noon, right, was the time shift. The shift. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So Brian is always seen alone leaving the house. You've seen the doorcam image there, and later on the street CCTV footage, also by witnesses, alone all the time. You're going to see that CCTV footage just in a second. In essence, it almost seems like Brian abandoned his trip into Waterford City to the phone shop and instead began to track back towards the quay in the opposite direction, that is Greenway, and more as if he was going back towards his home. So he sets out to go to the phone shop, but we've no record of him getting to the phone shop. Let's just take a quick look at this CCTV. Have your own thoughts on what you see in this image. It's brief. I think it's about 30-35 seconds. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so despite some poor location maps provided by the 2022 RTE Crime Call programme when it aired, and material provided by An Garda Síochána, finally, after a number of weeks of researching this, we've established that Brian intended to visit Ayr on Barron Strand Road, Waterford, his service provider. We also noted an adjacent shop called IT Star, which does computer and phone repairs. We have verified that Ayr found no CCTV footage of Brian on the day of his disappearance in their shop branch. We have no information on IT Star beyond that An Garda Síochána stated they checked with all phone shops in the Waterford area.
Now, Mick, I think if he had went in with a problem, they would have probably taken his name and logged into some sort of account they have for him.
You know, that an electronic footprint, and you know, so and he's not on CCTV. He's not logged as a customer. He's not remembered by anybody in there. I think it is pretty reasonable to conclude Brian Kinsella never visited that phone shop, or likely any other phone shop. Now, that statement by Gardaí that they checked all phone shops, to me it was a bit, frankly it's meaningless. It's a general statement. I don't know whether, to me, that it qualifies and includes IT Star, which if you look at this image here, you can actually see that white building there next to the purple air and yellow sign, that is IT Star. On Barron Strand. Considering,
really,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt. That really looks like a street that would have plenty of CCTV on it, doesn't it?
plenty.
Yeah.
It's that street. In fact, I think was only more recently refurbished prior to the time of 2021. So it was well refurbished, and it would have been well covered. And even the cameras around the Air Store, both inner cameras and outer cameras around the store. If Brian was in IT Star next to them, maybe didn't, get the help that he required or changed his mind, well, we have cameras on IT Star. So again, there is no evidence that Brian ever visited this area, despite his intentions. However, with these CCTV checks, it would seem hard for Brian to enter IT Star and not be picked up on the Air Store cameras or nearby street cameras around Barron Strand Road. It is important to remember, and we're at 12 noon now, Brian was due in work at the local Musgrave cash and carry. He didn't turn up for work. Brian's workplace is off the Kilbarry Outer Ring Road, and it's somewhat of an awkward journey if he was to walk there. In fact, to be truthful, it's not really a journey you would be walking there for work. Take a look at this map image. It might be too small to read some of the finer details on it. But you can see. Yeah, go ahead, Kieran.
What's the story with public transport to this place? Is there?
If you wanted to go by bus, you would literally have to get 3 buses. It would be you would walk there quicker than waiting for buses, to pick them up. There might be maybe a more direct route from Waterford City, directly from that phone shop. But again, we don't believe that Brian ever got there anyway. There's kind of 2 different routes. There's the darker blue, more direct route to that area. You can see there, that's the Musgrave right down at that bottom left corner. You can see the Musgrave. That's the industrial estate. It mightn't look much on the map, but it is an awkward distance to get to. If you drove by car, you'd probably get there in 10 or 12 minutes. And that would be the easiest way. If you walked, you're talking 50 minutes to an hour. If you wanted to bus it, it probably wouldn't be worth it, because there's no direct route as such. You'd be getting different buses. It wouldn't even be worth it. You'd probably take longer trying to get buses if you walked it.
I suppose a bike is the only other thing, isn't it?
Of course, a bike would be one obvious manner. But the most...
Imagine he would have owned a car. Looking where he lives in that place is...
We know there's a car in the garden, but we don't know whether is that his father's white car. I think it's a Peugeot, or whether it was his. I don't even know. Literally, and we're going to touch on this later in the tunnel, I don't even know whether Brian Kinsella had a driving licence or whether he drove. Or whether he had access, maybe not his own car, but he used his father, he shared his father's car. I don't know. That's how little detail we have on this case. Now, at about 4.5 kilometres from either his home in Gracedieu Heights or from Grattan Quay, it would require a 60-minute walk. This is to the Musgraves, 3 buses, or a 50-minute journey, or just 10 minutes, 10, maybe 12 minutes in a car, depending on traffic. We must ask ourselves, why was Brian taking such a leisurely walk, and yet in the CCTV images that you've watched, it doesn't look quite like a leisurely walk. It looks reasonably purposeful.
Yeah.
This isn't somebody just, I've nothing to do today. I've done that bit of business in the phone shop, despite the fact that we know he wasn't there. I'll just go for a bit of a ramble. No, he was actually in work at 12 o'clock for his shift. But he does appear to me in the CCTV to be walking with some degree of purpose.
Yeah, it's quite a nondescript walk, but I suppose you're right in saying that it's not a leisurely stroll.
It's not a leisurely, like you're out with the dog and the dog is stopping every few minutes and it wants to pee, it wants to do this, it wants to sniff that. Yeah. This isn't, or you're leisurely browsing in windows, or you're in no real rush to go anywhere. That walk was definitely not the walk of a man who had absolutely nothing to do that day. All the indications are that he intended returning home to Gracedieu Heights before work, but we do know he was walking in the direction of Waterford Greenway by 10:10 a.m, just north of his home, but considerably in the opposite direction to his workplace. Now, in the afternoon of November the 17th, 2021, communications between Musgrave's, his workplace, and Brian's family and friends begin. Concern grows throughout the day. He has neither returned home nor has he turned up for his work shift. By 7 p.m. that evening, following conversations between Brian Kinsella, Brian's sister, and her mum and dad, they officially inform Waterford Gardaí that Brian is missing. The following day, we're into November the 18th, the Thursday, Waterford Gardaí issue a missing persons alert overnight. It is important to note that it contained the key wording of family concern and well-being. Right or wrong, this generally reflects the input Gardaí receiving staff have of the missing person alert. How important is this? How quickly do we escalate this? How serious is this potentially? It is ominous for media in a missing person alert, particularly one so soon, within hours of somebody disappearing, and it generally is an immediate signifier that there is some serious concern for a person's well-being, particularly when those keywords are used. Sometimes they're used quite often, unnecessarily, but I want to stress that this or may not be the signal the family of Brian Kinsella wanted to give out at the time, but it is the wording and approach the Gardaí initially took, and to a degree for many weeks afterwards. Kieran?
Yeah, I'd say the guards, though, they'd be quite on top of them things, the press office releasing the wording statements.
Be very precise about what you say. Yeah.
Sure of that, I think, you'd be very...
Yeah. The alert was issued rapidly after the filed missing person report with local Waterford Gardaí. Brief, and it contained the signifiers we in the media more often associate with missing children, elderly people, or adults with an identified history of a medical issue or condition, or perhaps a past of going previously missing. But here's the thing. From what we know, Brian didn't fall into any of those categories. In the subsequent weeks and months, and we're moving from November 2021 into 2022, the search for Brian Kinsella stretches from weeks into months, right into February 2022. No trace of Brian is ever found. The search is extensive in the areas of Bilberry, Waterford, and also the River Suir and Waterford Greenway, and includes the following resources. Quite an extraordinary amount of resources. The Garda helicopter, the Garda water unit, the Coast Guard, the Rescue 117 air chopper, the Marine Search and Rescue in Waterford, River Rescue, Civil Defence, Mallow Search and Rescue, local volunteers, family and friends. The family of Brian remain adamant that there was nothing unusual going on with Brian, nor anything unusual about the day of his disappearance, and that it was completely out of character for him. While we have no specific telecommunications detail from Brian's phone, it is known by family that his phone behaved as if it was switched off since the day of his disappearance. Over months, there were many reported sightings of Brian, but Gardaí managed to eliminate all of these supposed sightings. As we move from 2022 to 2024, subsequent investigations into the missing case of Brian Kinsella revealed no electronic footprints or what is known in an investigation as signs of life thereafter. This includes movement and registration of ID in certain places, passport controls, and telecoms and banking activity. All of these things a person would need to deliberately disappear or travel abroad. Kieran, before we move into our conclusions and analysis.
One thing there that kind of stuck out to me a bit was the guards seem to be putting a lot of resources into searching like
huge amount.
Yeah, because you know some of the cases, I suppose, like we could say like Annie McCarrick or Deirdre Jacob and so on, like they're just the guards are kind of looking all over the place as they would, you know, they're not following one specific
line.
Yeah,
they have multiple lines of inquiry that they have to follow.
Exactly,
and tips and what have you.
See, I wonder would it be in 2021? I think like they can kind of do these like CCTV grids where they can kind of see if he walks here and then you don't see him come out here, that means he has to go this place, you know, that kind of way. They can kind of like investigate on that. So I wonder, would that lead them to somewhere?
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose the most important point I think that you brought up, and I don't want to overplay this necessarily, but it was something I didn't put enough consideration in, because, you know, I suppose we all want to forget about it as quickly as possible. You know, even November 2021, you know, we had come out of one, or not quite, we hadn't fully come out of it. We were in one hell of a rough time. This was during the height of the COVID pandemic. There were still an awful lot of businesses that shutters were down, weren't operating. There were an awful lot of people sitting at home who didn't have a job to go to because it just wasn't, they couldn't go to work, or they had to work from home.
Oh yeah, it kind of messed with a lot of people as well.
And like, we're not inferring anything here, but it's important that when we think back to that time, that we don't forget that this was the era of that. That is the way it was.
Yeah, not quite back then, but yeah, then.
Yeah. Okay, so conclusions and analysis. Wow, where do you go with this? This is a difficult case to reach any definitive conclusions on. Comes down to what we know about the specific day of his disappearance, Brian's, but we are missing a wealth of history and personal information on Brian prior to those events. And it's this kind of information that is important in public missing person appeals. That's often where the clues lie in establishing important details like state of mind, behaviour and recent activities before a disappearance. Not when a disappearance happens, but what's going on before. It's not what we know, it's what we don't know. In most missing person cases, particularly after several years without answers and resolution, a picture can often be painted of a person and their life. I said at the outset of this timeline, months on, when we first examined the case of Brian Kinsella last year, it's like Brian existed publicly from the day of his disappearance, and not before. There's a reasonable argument to be made that that is the way it should be, and privacy of a person and family should be respected. I understand that. But when it's a missing person, therein's the problem. Because in truth, I don't know who Brian Kinsella from Waterford is. I know he was loved and cherished by his family, and he's deeply missed by all of those people who came in contact with him. And yet, I don't know what Brian loved to do when he wasn't working. I can't tell you what his passions and hobbies were. Brian might be an aspiring GAA player. He might have climbed the Himalayas, swam in the lush seas of Bali, wanted to be a teacher. What music he loved to listen to, who his favourite soccer team or GAA team was, or club. All the wonderful things he thrived on in his life until the age of 29. Give me the name of a missing person, and I'll pretty much be able to give you a picture of that person's life in a positive manner. Who they are, what they made of themselves, what they were about. I've done it numerous times with Ciara, Patricia, Trevor, Jean, Fiona, Ailsa, Jan, Deirdre, Annie, Claire, Chris and Leanne, Aisling, Mary, all of the people in the cases we have covered on Radio Espial, and many more I've probably not even thought of off the top of my head. But despite public hearing from his parents and sisters in appeals and the Gardaí investigation team, we're still left asking, who is Brian Kinsella? And that's never a good thing in a missing person case. His light in life should shine bright, and he needs to be back with his family. Unless something else comes to light, I can only conclude that Brian Kinsella had no enemies or troubles in his life. Moreover, there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever to date that Brian Kinsella was the victim of harm or threat that somehow led to his disappearance. That no one else was involved on the Wednesday morning in November 2021. Now, I always, both me and Kieran, we do our best in a missing person case, considering the family and friends. We put them front and centre when we can. This case was a big challenge, but it was still well worth doing and covering. And for these following reasons. Once a person goes missing and it becomes national and international news, we, as a society, need to do more for their families to support them and give them a proper established structure to reach out to the public beyond just appointing a case liaison officer to guide them.
Yeah, like some sort of media training even.
Yeah, like nobody, none of these families wake up one morning and have prepared or trained or planned or been briefed as to how and what they do to deal with a missing loved one. There's no manual there. And yes, they can have all the counselling supports, the Garda liaison officers, they can have all the advice, they can have all the friend support, they can have all that, but there's nothing written down to say, this is what you do now, this is how you go about this. And often the Gardaí will say, no, look, leave the investigation to us. If anything develops, we'll tell you, and don't be going and talking too much to the media. And this is the problem. And ultimately, what happens, as in so many cases that we've covered, it gets left to the family to do the real alert and awareness. And that's not fair, and that's not right.
No, because they've enough to be dealing with.
They've enough to be dealing with. They shouldn't have to do any of that, only when it's required. But so often they have to tread the footpaths, schools, shops, train stations, to find out, speak to people, locals, ask them, do they know anything, put posters up. Then we need a proper structure. I know the work of the National Missing Persons.ie organisation and other organisations in Ireland, and as well as internet, do amazing work to assist families. But there needs to be a proper structure in place as to...
Like them, they're doing unbelievable work, but it's like so many things in Ireland, they're just probably financially restricted.
And there's a financial cost, because most people in that position where a loved one goes missing and there are no answers or resolution, you're not in a position to go straight back to work or do whatever you have to do. And your head is in the wrong place, and it can take months to get back on track. And so there's a financial impact as well.
Then you're going to have to start paying for, like, not necessarily your own investigation, but your own media campaign and stuff like that.
Look at the most recent case we covered. Berna, who lives in London, and regarding her missing sister, Ailsa, is travelling, I think she told 50 times she's been here, travelling back and forth. No,
oh my God.
the Gardaí ain't paying for that. She's doing it herself. And so many other families are in that position. You know, and we need to, and I know there was the amazing people at the WMSER, the Waterford Search and Rescue, did amazing work to raise funds as well for the family. That's the kind of thing that you need. You don't just need mental help, physical help, you also need financial help for a family in situations like this, and we don't have enough resources in this country to help those families.
No boundaries ever on the financial help they need. Like, that should never be in a country, in a first world country. It's unacceptable.
Because when this happens to a family, their world falls apart overnight in hours. Far too often, despite the independent networks like Missing Ireland, the national organisations, recommended counselling services, I see too many sisters, brothers and parents work and worry themselves to the point of sickness and even an early death, never to have a resolution, at their own finance and health risk, trying to fill what they see in an alert and awareness stopgap between the investigation team and what they themselves feel isn't being done. In the absence of new evidence, that of an abduction in the Brian Kinsella case, whether there was a lack of evidence of a serious assault or any crime being committed on Brian that morning, we're really only left with two scenarios here, unless other evidence comes to light. That Brian experienced some accident or misadventure and ended up in the waterway, or, and for whatever unknown reasons, God forbid, he chose to end his life under his own actions. The activities and general direction of the search activities in this case over many months would seem to indicate that they also believed those two scenarios were the more likely. Kieran, as we finish up.
Terrible one for the family. Just no answers. But I think I suppose my thinking would be along the lines of your thinking. Just I'd go back to just the fact that there's so much CCTV around today. Like, if he was to go in a different direction or walk back towards the city or whatever,
something would have turned up.
Yeah, and he's from there, so someone would have seen him or whatever.
If there was a family dispute, a falling out, an issue, some form of aggression at work, if there was some form of threat, God forbid, if there was some kind of attached criminality, we would know that. If Brian turned up somewhere, we would know that. All these avenues have been eliminated. We are where we are with these two scenarios. Without any other evidence, it's hard to go outside of where we are.
No, but you don't allow. I know, like, there's very little known about him, but my impression would be that he doesn't seem to be involved in anything. No. I think there's absolutely no reason to even go down that avenue. There's very little to suggest, like, just from what we know about him, like in his victimology or whatever, that there's anything really to go on. But then there's nothing out there much, unfortunately. And like I said, we can't invent evidence, and I always argue in cases as well. I know people will say, but they spent months searching the river, Soar, and other areas, water areas in there. In the Waterford area, and nothing. So he can't be there. No. Look, you're falling down the rabbit hole of absence of evidence. Absence of evidence is not evidence itself. Just because Brian was not found in the River Soar or somewhere else does not necessarily equal so he couldn't have been there. No, in such a thing like nature like that, you can't eliminate anything. No. You know, that way it's like you'd have to start getting into like marine expertise.
Yeah, at times like November, December, even February, even into March. For God's sake, they had snow in parts of Ireland and we're already into the 1st of March today. You
Yeah.
know, that river Suir is a very wide river in parts. It is a ferocious river and quite fast moving, and it's deep, and it's a vast area as well.
Yeah.
So again, absence of evidence does not necessarily mean something.
No, it's non-conclusive. Basically,
No.
Really.
And that's really how we can sum this case up. A tragic case for the family, but there is no conclusive evidence that anything untoward or harm came to Brian. There is no evidence of it, and there's nothing that appears to be untoward in his life.
No.
And that's kind of why we're at the two scenarios I think we are at, and it's difficult without any other evidence to go beyond there.
I put up posters with my oldest son Keith. He's a great help, and sisters, they've done posters with me now as well, and all the circle of friends that Brian has, they're great. Like, they divide up the posters between themselves, and they're all taking different locations to put them up. The searches haven't stopped, which we're so happy about. But in one way, it's very comforting knowing that there's nothing after being found in the river, which makes us feel that there's a possibility that he's not there, that he is out there somewhere.
Just to come home, Brian, please. Our hearts are broken. Ring somebody, or just go into any guard station, and they'll be able to let us know that you're safe.
I love Brian so much, and couldn't ask for a nicer brother to have.
If you'd please come home. He's missed so much. We want you home.
Kieran, I don't think we can say any more from this case.
No, good work, Mick, because that would have been a hard one for you.
Yeah. This was tough. I did think twice about doing this case, but I thought, no, let's push on, because as I've just spoken about, it does raise other issues, wider issues as regards the situation that families are in when these situations occur, and that we are not fucking doing enough for them, resource wise, funding wise, and support wise. Thank you for joining me and Kieran for this episode. God bless, and we'll talk to you soon in another episode. Take care.
Thanks.